Yay! So we've got, I think we've got the whole team here. So I'll just kind of go through and introduce everyone. So Erin Tarr is the co-executive director for the Bear Yuba Land Trust, which is located here in Nevada County. And then we also have Shelly Covert, who's here, and she's the spokesperson for the Nisenan, the Nevada City Rancheria, and she's also the executive director for CHIRP, which is the California Heritage Indigenous Research Project.
Cool.
And then we've got the filmmakers from the Film Public Trust. So we've got director David Byers, and then we also have Jeremy Hunter here, Ruben. So thanks so much for being here, you guys. Yeah, so what did everyone, I'd love to hear Erin and Shelly's feedback on the movie.
You go first, Erin.
Okay, yeah. Well, I actually watched it with my kids, and it was really a powerful story that I think for them, they didn't really understand. Like, we've been taking them to these public places, we've been going to national parks their whole lives, but they really didn't understand the threat that they're under. So kind of making that connection was really important, and then seeing how the work that we're doing with the Land Trust really fits into that whole bigger story. You know, it just makes our work that much more important as well, and kind of deepens that passion just to continue on and continue doing what we're doing. And yeah, I think that the film just really told a very, very powerful story that's really timely, and everyone needs to understand that and hear that.
Thanks, Erin. Real quick, do you mind getting a lot of wind across your microphone? Can you maybe turn your computer a little bit? Maybe. There we go.
Is that better?
Thank you. Yeah.
Director directing.
Yeah, thank you.
Director.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And Shelly, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Oh, no, I just, it's interesting. I don't watch things like the show on purpose most of the time because, well, I feel that if you guys know me, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky, always hopeful and optimistic person. And yet at the same time, we're all just blind. We all live in a 2-second clip of what reality is and should be. And for our tribe, we've already lost everything. Everything's already gone. Sorry, it makes me so emotional. There's such a tiny, tiny, tiny bit left. And I know that people are good and they don't mean to be so dumb. I think most of the time, and they don't for here anyway, where we live in California, nobody has a basis of comparison of what it's supposed to be like, what it was like, and the histories don't really reflect it well. So of course, for me, I try hard not to see stuff like this, because I know it already. I'm like, we're all dancing on the edge of a sword and we don't know it, so you may as well party on, what I mean? It's just, and then that fights with my internal, my knowledge, my position in the tribe, and the stories and history that I have and know deep inside my heart and soul. And what makes me really happy though is it's such a good film, and that it will captivate people and you're into it. Like I was trying to be standoffish, and like just a few minutes in, like that lead man, the journalist, you're just like sucked in instantly. So whether you want to watch it or not, I think it's just gonna open up a whole new group of people's minds to, the stuff that I feel like, oh yeah, I already know all that. Watching that Indigenous woman's face, watching her react to the things that were happening just ripped my heart out.
Yeah.
Because I'm too close to it and I understand. But yeah, wow, what a powerful, powerful tool. And if everybody would just open their eyes and look, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Vote.
I was so surprised. We've had a lot of comments about the movies for the film festival this year, and Public Trust continues to get so many comments. And they've ranged from "thank you for sharing this film with us" to "why are you showing lefty films," and anti-President Trump films, and "why are you showing negative films?" So David, why do you think something like Public Lands is so political when it's just about conserving and protecting the land for the animals and for future generations and for our own personal enjoyment and use?
Money. It's like, there's a lot of money in that, and there's a potential for a lot of money in those lands, and that's what some people see these lands through the lens of, and that's the only thing they're capable of doing. And so that's why it becomes political. That's why it becomes a political football. And then, people deploy the culture wars around it to try to, skew the issue and convince people to divest themselves of, this shared asset, simply because it's seen through the lens of, left versus right. And it's really not, the fact of the matter is, like, President Trump, in terms of this being an anti-President Trump film, President Trump has reduced protections on more public lands than anyone ever. So it's simply the truth. And if that has if that's perceived as a leftward slant, then so be it. We can't kind of, I'm not into this, what you see in the media a lot is this kind of like obsession of the fetishization of balance. I don't think that every single issue is perfectly balanced and everyone's right on both sides. I just don't believe that, and I think that this kind of left versus right paradigm in and of itself is kind of a distraction versus what's really going on, and that's the incredibly wealthy people in the U.S. Trying to divest us of our public lands and trying to accumulate as much wealth as possible at the expense of all the rest of us anyhow. And so, I think the left versus right is just, that's us poor people just fighting other poor people. We don't need that, and it works to the advantage of those who would just kind of take all the wealth for themselves and leave us all in the dust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jeremy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think David said that perfectly. I mean, those who would interpret this as a leftist film, that's something we see right now on a lot of different issues, is attacking journalists for displaying facts. And when facts all of a sudden become something that we're going to debate whether you have a slant because you're putting facts out there, that becomes a dangerous territory. And that's frankly, that's the way we've seen fascist regimes act in the past. And, we're simply talking about the fact that President Trump and his administration has removed 34 million acres of public lands from protection. And like David said, that is more removal than it is protection. No president has done that in history. And so to state the facts isn't, we're not trying to take a party position here. Public lands has been a bipartisan issue forever. Like we show in the film, Nixon signed many of these protective bills into law. We have a Republican state legislator saying, everybody loves public lands. Why would you attack this? It's a bad idea. They're popular. And he's all for the protection of the boundary waters. So I think those who would put this in the realm of partisanship, I think you have to really look at it. Are they trying to fan the flames of a culture war? Are they getting us, like David said, poor people to fight poor people? And who really benefits from that? And quite frankly, it's big extractive industry, often foreign entities and foreign companies that are controlled elsewhere. And so I think if pointing that out is political, then I guess we're political.
You've said that you didn't want to make like a voice of God documentary. You really wanted to have a lot of different perspectives, and particularly the indigenous cultures from each of those lands that you profile. Can you kind of speak to when you guys started, when you first initially took on the project and you wanted to, have this bigger discussion around the public lands? Like, why was it so important for you to include that? And why was that kind of like the storyteller that you needed to include?
Yeah, well, Jeremy, in terms of our specific geographies, once we identified those, and Jeremy can speak a little bit more to that, he has been working in public lands for so long, and that he kind of knew a little bit who to go to or where to start looking. But I'll let Jeremy speak to that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it was obvious to us early on, if you want to talk about this land in North America, it's an indigenous story to begin with. And there's a tough pill to swallow there, for all of us who enjoy public lands to understand where they came from. These are native lands, and they were frankly just stolen unjustly. Now there's an opportunity through them to do some healing and some better things, like we saw take place with Bear's Ears in the Obama administration. But yeah, you can't talk about these places without talking about the people who have been the stewards of this land since time immemorial. And so when we dug in on these geographies, it was obvious to us that you couldn't tell the story without going to Utah, where there's a huge movement that would divest people and transfer public lands away to industry. But there's also this incredible, powerful story of people who are still living there, still protecting these places, and have a living culture that is in the landscape. And so those voices have to be first and foremost. And obviously the same thing with the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge with the Gwich'in. And in meeting Bernadette, it was like, you are our storyteller for this place. There's zero ego in the equation. She is there for her people and their continued survival off of that land, and the preservation for all of us. I mean, I can't believe the open hearts of people who would say, like, yes, we want this for future generations of all of us. And it's not just about us, it's about all of us. So I think our storytellers from each of these locations really captured what was going on there and brought us, the perspective that Americans need to hear and understand.
Yeah. I was amazed to find that, or learn that 2/3 of Utah belongs to the government. That was, there's so much amazing information that you guys share in that. For Aaron and Shelley, how does that aspect of the story resonate like in a local setting for Nevada County?
Well, I would say for the land trust, we're always working to protect land, and when we're buying land in fee title, our goal is always to then turn it over to a public agency at some point, an appropriate public agency in the future. I mean, something that we would love to be able to do more of and are hoping to work further towards is working more directly with the Nisenan, particularly through their ancestral homeland reciprocity program. How can we give back some of this land to the natural owners, and how can we work together to they've been stewarding this land for so long, how can we learn from that and give back in that way? So that's something that we're working towards. We surely haven't perfected it, but that's always kind of the underlying ultimate goal. Is this wasn't our land to begin with. We're trying to protect the resources and protect it for everyone to be able to access and enjoy. But who are the best owners of this land in perpetuity, so that future generations can also be part of it.
Shelley, was there, you kind of spoke about this earlier, but similarities between the stories with the various folks that are featured in the film and with your own group and your own family story?
Oh, of course. I feel that wherever there's a movement to protect land, there's usually, if there's anybody left, that is, there's usually the Indigenous people who are on the front lines protecting water, trees, open lands. And, like you had said, the poor people fighting the poor people. The Native Americans across the country, with the exception of a few of the casino gaming tribes now that have actually made money and, have some power and money, I guess. Most Indians not. But they're sometimes the poorest of the poor, I feel a great connection to the girl featured in the film because like you said, she has no ego. There's no room for that kind of stuff. This is all about responsibility. And the same with barriers is like, these are intergenerational fights. These are not just lifetime fights. It's not like I'm going to get I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound flippish, but a career's work, a lifetime of career in environmental protection is obviously something that people can be proud of. But these are intergenerational. These fights have gone on and on and on. And of course it resonates deeply because that's the position I've been put in with my family. And not only does it feel sometimes it's like I have my own responsibility as a person, my responsibility as a woman to my family, my extended family, and my tribal family, but it feels like you're fighting the entire world sometimes. Like nobody's got common sense. Nobody can see this crazy bubble that we're all living in, where everything is based on having a job. Mm-hmm. And like we saw when we were all homebound here with COVID, like when you put the big pause button on the economy and consumerism, it doesn't really work that well. And the planet rejoiced when we stayed indoors for a while. It's so resilient. And so, of course, yeah, I feel like, sure, it's another tribe, another person, but it just is duplicated. It's over and over and over again. Of course, we have our own issues here in Northern California in our homelands. We have no land. We're a terminated tribe. That my whole thing is to regain and restore our federal recognition that was taken from us in 1964. And it's just so absurd that I am all these generations down. I'm fighting for that. It's like, does nobody not see? And why again, it feels like fighting the entire world or holding the world down. I don't want to be like that, my little fiddle, but it feels like not only do you have to stand up for your own people, but like you're protecting all of humanity from this, some kind of amnesia or something that everybody has, or like living in some kind of strange alternate reality, where the planet and its health really doesn't have anything to do with anything. And so yeah, I absolutely it did, it was one of those moments where I stood up and boy, did I feel like fighting after the show was over. I was like, wow, it just got me going again. So I did appreciate it in that way. I guess you need the fire, right? The fire inside.
It's true. Like I cried and I got fired up, and then I cried a little bit more. And I think the imagery that you guys utilize in the film is just so impactful, from everything of, the wildlife, cinematography, and just really showing the exquisite nature of these, the public lands and the wild places, but then also contrasting it with what is left behind when you allow natural resource extraction and the mining. And a lot of that, I think for some of us, even though we are, we do live in the mountains of Northern California, the minefields of Utah and Wyoming and Montana are so far away. It was quite shocking.
Right. Yeah. There's a saying in the environmental community, like you can't really lose. because that's what happens. And so we have to like continue fighting and like was mentioned, like this is an intergenerational thing. These lands are going to have been here for millions of years, going to be here for millions of years to come. And I think it was important to kind of show that juxtaposition. And a lot of those beauty shots were really just, we wanted to show people their public lands and like show them what the variety is, because it's insane. It's 640 million acres of the most diverse ecosystem, and it's owned by all of us, and that is incredible. Not only is this a place that you can go and enjoy on a personal level, but this is something that provides, ecosystem services. It's the last bastion, one of the last bastions against climate change. And, it is preserving a wildness on the planet that we just need. I think that it enhances, not only our personal enjoyment, but our humanity and our connection to the planet that we're on.
I think it's really interesting. There's like a criticism out there of people who work in conservation and probably of our film as well, of like, well, you drive a car, you heat your house, you're complicit in all of this. And it's kind of an empty argument when you really look at the balance of the way things are being done, because there is resource extraction that we are complicit in, and it can be done in a semi-balanced way, in a regenerative way. We can invest in renewable energy sources. We're choosing really not to overall. And, it's a really empty criticism that we hear a lot. And, instead of looking at efficiencies in a system, we're talking about having a huge, world's largest gold mine up in Alaska right now, near the headwaters of Bristol Bay, right? The last wild sockeye salmon run. And it's like, why aren't we talking about efficiencies and recycling and the piles and piles of materials that we aren't using? Instead, we're talking about ways that somebody can make a quick buck, like David kind of started with. And I think that was kind of our goal, is to show this is what happens with unregulated development instead of thoughtful, because there is a balance to be struck, and there are resources that we're complicit in being extracted. I think we'd both like to see more renewables and more things like that, but that's just a criticism that's out there, and it's one that I always like to flag and identify. The scales are tipped way on the other side.
Even the discussion on job creation is, when you had with the boundary waters, like how much a new mine would create new jobs versus the jobs that are already there that are based on the boundary waters. I just don't understand where the disconnect is.
Yeah, Jeremy, what do you know those numbers? What the national numbers are?
Well, so the numbers in Minnesota, like the boundary waters, I believe there's like 17,000 jobs that are directly connected to the boundary waters, and outdoor recreation and tourism industry and those kinds of things. Nationally, the figure is like, I want to say $800 billion in economic impact of public lands, and it's incredibly significant. I'm in Colorado right now, where it's like, if you didn't have the outdoor rec industry, the economy would evaporate, especially right now when everybody needs a job. And the outdoors are like our last bastion of sanity. So that's a funny discussion, because you always see with these mining projects, it's going to make 400 jobs or 500 jobs and jobs. Well, where are those jobs in, 5 to 10 years when the resource is gone? And where are those communities? You can drive through them. They're all through the West. Mm-hmm. They're all through Western Colorado. They're in Utah, and they're struggling and they're hurting. And the numbers show in counties in the West where you protect public lands with like the most stringent protections, the economy is stronger, the job numbers are stronger, and not just like service.
I think you froze, Jeremy.
I know. We'll get back to Jeremy. He was on a good point roll there.
Maybe he's just being thoughtful right now.
I know.
Maybe he froze in real life.
It's quite beautiful wherever he's at. But this brings up a good point of like point of entry, for all of all of us, how do we connect to public lands personally? Is it through, I know David, you've said it was because you were an outdoorsy person and you loved skiing and being outdoors. And I feel like Aaron, Shelley, and I are in the similar, we feel that same way. We like to camp and hike and be outdoors, and that's very important to us. So, and then you do have all these other folks that, hunt and fish. And so there's a real diversity of like how we each come to enjoy public lands. How do we get more people connected to
Right.
public lands? And maybe
Yeah.
Aaron, you want to start with that, and then we'll go to David.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that getting kids out as early as they can is something that's really important. With the land trust, we have 45 miles of trails, so those are open. We're trying to create more trails that are universally accessible so that people of all kinds can walk those trails. But just having open access to nature is something that is very important. We've also started this BioBlitz program. So in the springtime, bringing usually 4th and 5th graders out onto the properties with really the intent of just to observe. There's no structured, field trip that they're really doing. It's more just look at the flowers, look at the animals, just observe everything, just slow down and look. And sometimes I feel like that opportunity just to really slow down lets you see how magnificent nature is and how beautiful and perfect a flower, just how it is structured. It's perfect. So maybe that's helping some kids just internalize that and then want to seek it out more. I feel like being outdoors in nature too, it brings happiness to people. It kind of decreases stress and things like that. So if people can experience that, then they have an incentive to protect that in the future.
As we kind of go through this moment in the country where we're talking about race a lot, I think that needs to be part of the conversation with public lands as well. A lot of the people you see on public lands look like me. They're lily white guys and that look good in Lycra, and so we need to make sure that we're extending these public lands out to other people of different races and creeds and just everyone who may not feel welcome on public lands, because that's definitely a thing. And we in the way we do that is not only like by personally reaching out to friends and stuff like that and just kind of growing the constituency within our own circles and extended circles and stuff like that, but also supporting these kinds of groups that are doing that work and like that are getting kids that normally wouldn't go out to public lands on public lands, that are getting adults who normally wouldn't get on public lands and public lands. They're introducing them to fishing, to hunting, to hiking, to biking, whatever, just to get people out there and then really being excited about that happening. Because the more people you see, really valuing these public lands, the more we're going to protect them. There's that, I'm going to ruin this. There's an old Baba Diom quote. It's, you only, oh God, I'm not even going to try.
You love
maybe I'll, what's that?
You only love what you know, and you only know what you're taught.
Right, and you only protect what you love, or something like that. Anyhow, someone's gonna like really hate this Q&A.
Jeremy, before you exit, we were talking about how all of us come to public lands in different ways. And so how do we just kind of increase the awareness, and how do we get more people on board with understanding the importance of them and, and encouraging their own love for public lands?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the really important thing is to realize that it's everybody's backyard. Wherever you are, you have access to public lands, whether it's your local park. There's a national fund that funds Land and Water Conservation Fund that funds your ball field or your little trail next to the river. So I think connecting to your own watershed's critically important. And I think a lot of people can grow their appreciation and understanding of public lands from there. But also in understanding that this does belong to everybody. Doesn't matter if you're off of exit 16 on the Jersey Turnpike. You can hop in your car with your kids and like Hal says, a few packs of ramen and spend a week on public lands out west or wherever. But David started to talk about this, and it's not everybody has felt welcome, on public lands. And it's a part of our racist past as a country. And it's something that we have to really look at, and we have to be more inclusive and welcoming in our public lands, and not only be mentors, but make sure there's safe spaces, and there's information, and people are invited to the whole thing, because we don't keep this if we're all not working together to fight for it. It's going to take all of us to be stewards. So I think that's a big thing, is take the youth out into the woods and get them out there and seeing their heritage.
Absolutely. There's a social justice part to it as well. I mean, because, there's a lot of public lands that I'll never see in my life, but I definitely want them to be there. And maybe not just necessarily for wildlife and the animals, but also for the indigenous cultures and communities that live near and off that land. Shelley, I mean, while watching this, that story is so important, and but sometimes it either gets lost, or it's manipulated, or it's also maybe not told.
Absolutely. There in my tribe and my family and my elders, there's still so much fear. I mean, that old phrase, like, oh, now here I go, not being able to say quotes, about how dangerous it is to leave the res. Like, that's a thing. Like, the most beautiful places in the country had people living there, and they were removed, either forcefully just forced off, or a lot of times killed. And that's very much how it is here. And a lot of my cousins, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, in the past, people have snuck onto forested lands to gather herbs or to do these traditional things. It's incredible that any of them still exist, that there's a place that has been uninterrupted in gathering, that wasn't blown up by the gold rush or development and stuff. And like, the whole concept of public lands is really new for a lot of the people in my tribe, because you get in trouble, you can get arrested, and it probably comes along with like picking basket materials or trying to find medicines. There's, I'm so naive sometimes, I don't even know like what's okay to do and what's not okay to do right now, even today. Sitting here and all the work that I do, I honestly couldn't tell you. And that's because it's stemmed in so much fear. And, remembering that the gold rush was 160 years ago. So I'm not sure how many generations that is. I think I'm 9 out from the actual gold rush. And so these are living fears and memories that exist in my mom, that came directly from my mom's parents, who one was taken in a boarding school, is all him and my grandfather and his siblings taken away to boarding school. And then grandma, worked in the field since the time she was 4. And the whole, the whole concept of public land and recreating is, I mean, honestly, I loved how you said that about inviting people. And like, I would say that most people don't know that they're public and that American citizens are welcome on those lands. So if I was in charge today, what a beautiful resource and an economic machine to invite that and educate and just make it a whole part of the school system. And I mean, it could just be so fantastic. I also just wanted to mention, before I forget again, the shot you guys had of the caribou, I think, and how she was saying that, there's the one lasting caribou herd that goes, not to keep dinging the bell on everything that's been lost, but like with the buffalo herds that used to roam this continent, were supposed to be here forever, so people would always be able to eat. We had antelope and elk here in Northern California. They're completely gone. Our salmon is so restricted that the people can't go down and do their traditional salmon gathering. But with the loss of land comes with the loss of the diversity of those incredible animals. And so many of them are what in our history and culture and our stories is that humans are stupid, and we all learned how to live by watching and learning from the animals. And I guess that's just a testament to saying, yeah, I guess those stories were true. We're supposed to protect them. We put ourselves at the top of the food chain. And, now the parks are a place where you can go and stay the night without being, mauled by a grizzly or, anyway, it's just that interconnected web of life. It's so broken already. I worry, if we don't do something now, what's going to happen to us all?
In filming this, was there anything that really surprised you guys that you wouldn't have the foresight of seeing this happen, or an aspect of the story, or even, you guys have shown in several film festivals so far, so maybe even in audience response, has there been something that's really kind of like deeply shocked you or surprised you?
I would say maybe just the massiveness of like kind of the effort to divest us of our public lands, like the kind of brazenness of it, and how they're not even trying to hide it. Like this is all out in the open. This is all on the floors of Congress. This is in their written work and stuff like that. It is insane. And what's really striking to me, that this is probably the thing, is like how cheaply our politicians are willing to sell out our public lands, for not that much campaign money, billions of dollars of minerals and oil that belongs to us. And something that's also striking to me is, and this is the fact that this is even radical, just blows my mind, is that, these minerals and this oil they do belong to us, and we give them to people for like very small fees. We give them to people to be very rich. I have no idea why we do that. If we're going to extract on our lands, why don't we give ourselves the money if we own it? So anyhow, I'm just kind of going through a laundry list of things. And unfortunately, the screenings have been all virtual and stuff like that, so we haven't been able to interact with audiences the way we would like to. But the response has been awesome. We've won a few audience awards. I was a bit surprised by that, because usually those go to just the very feel good films. And this one, this one just rips the Band-Aid off over and over again and punches you in the stomach a bit. So, but I've been heartened by that. I think it's because people are starting to have a connection to their lands, and that we are all craving that. Like, I don't know who my ancestors are. I don't know where I come from. I don't know what my connection is, like back a million years. But I want that. I want to know that, and I think a lot of people want that. I think maybe public lands is a way for people to get kind of an inkling of that.
Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, certainly the way that this film's resonated with audiences has been, we hope that we made a great film, and we hope that we accomplished some goals, like explaining what public lands are, explaining that there's some threats, and motivating people to engage more and look into it. And but it's been, it's the reception, however virtual, has been great. And we made a really concentrated effort not to let the audience off the hook at the end of the film, right?
Yeah.
And David was really good about keeping us on that task. And you have this tendency, you've kind of gone through this roller coaster of emotion to want to like end on a high note. And we really needed to make sure that we end with like, hey, we can do this, but it's going to take some work here. And so it's been really neat to see, and surprising to me to see like some audience awards roll in, like David said. And other things that opened my eyes in the making of this film was spending time with Bernadette, and spending time with Angelo, and spending time with Spencer, just being on the ground and really kind of making these friends and starting to understand the place through their eyes, it really it helped shift our perspective, you know. And it's funny, we were in Utah and we were actually camping on public lands because it's the least expensive and most fun way to lodge yourselves while making a film. And I told Angelo, I was like, oh, we're down here at this campsite, you know, and we had Hal with us, the journalist, and we're like, you know, if you'd like to come join us and camp with us. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, a lot of us don't really stomach the idea of having to go pay to camp on land that was ours.
Right.
And I totally get that. It makes perfect sense, but like the thought hadn't really crossed my mind. And so it was just kind of fun, you know, bumping up against your own biases and understanding and opening your eyes a little more.
It's definitely, the film doesn't wrap up in a nice little bow. And that's good. And there's a lot of environmental, social justice films out there that have like told similar stories with calls of action. And I think that, there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I've already seen that movie before. I've already heard that story. But for your guys' film with Public Trust, it's so different and it's a different time. And why do you guys think that, this is great.
Is that me?
No, I think it's me. Let me turn it
Am I
off.
doing that?
And it's still going. Okay, I think we're gonna turn it off. But why do you guys think like right now is a special time for a film like this?
Yeah, kind of when we were pitching this, Jeremy, way back in 2017, in the before times, it feels like.
We could talk to ourselves back then.
I know, right?
Turn around, it's a trap. I think we were talking about this. Public lands is a really hard thing to explain, right? It is near on impossible to make a film that encapsulates the entirety of 640 million acres of anything. So we so that was like a huge challenge for us, but and it was kind of a bit of a bold and audacious and maybe kind of naive pitch that we were going for, just not only because of the size, the scope of the lands, but also the history, the depth, the bitter pills to swallow, the troubled history of public land, and then also the philosophical context of what does that mean now for all of us? What do these public lands mean now? And so for us, that film had not been made, and so we wanted to make that film, but also this is the film for the moment because yes, public lands have always been under threat, but never more so than today. We're looking at like a movement that's out in the open that wants to transfer lands to the state, which would just mean eventual privatization, and actually probably very quickly. First, if we transferred lands to California, first forest fire that hit, those lands would go up for auction. And that's tens of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres per year. So those are kind of the two things we wanted to do. It's we wanted to make the film about public lands, which is really hard, and then and kind of dumb, and then we wanted to to really do it right now, and so we turned it around very quickly for what we were trying to accomplish, and that just was a huge testament to Jeremy and also our editor Lyman Smith, just crushing it. So.
Well, and it had to be made right now too, for a lot of reasons. It's like David said, we've never they're unprecedented attacks on these public lands. We've never seen something so as bold as like an administration so bold as to just try to unravel something like the Antiquities Act. Going back to Theodore Roosevelt, it's been used by presidents of both parties to protect public lands. Right. Never something that was used to undo those protections, and legally probably pretty dubious whether that can happen. But also it needed to be made now because it's this huge opportunity for unity. I mean, if you can't come together on this one thing, and the numbers and polling numbers of people show that you really can. People believe in protecting this is America. This is the best of us. When we come together to protect something, whether it's a land trust plot in Northern California or a watershed on the East Coast or anything, that's when we're at our best. And that's something for us to all be proud of. We've somehow, despite everything, managed to keep this 640 million acres and all the waters for future generations. And so if we're on the cusp of losing that, we had to make the film now. And we had to get people to come together and kind of look objectively at what this thing actually is on the planet. Because it doesn't exist in any other country like it does here.
Yeah, it's very American.
That's right.
And I love the point too about that you have to keep a very close, watchful eye on industrialism.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, companies are made to make money. They have a fiduciary duty to their stockholders to maximize profit. What that means is reducing expenses. And what's expensive? Protecting land. So they're literally going to make it's agnostic. They're not there's probably good people that work at these companies, but that's their responsibility. That is how they are legally set up, and they are intergenerational as well. They do think intergenerationally, which is why we need to organize on that level as well. And that's just the case. We decide what's allowed on our land, and a lot of times we decide that it's okay to be completely destroyed, and that's on us to not let that happen. And again, that's when these companies in their pursuit of maximizing profits, start to support these culture wars that have the poor people fighting the poor people, and then creating distractions, and then people literally dying on the hill of protecting industry from overreaching government, which is us. So we just have to keep an eye on them and really make sure that they don't become the more powerful ones in the country. Well, they already have, let's be honest, but we need to rein in the power of big corporations in terms of making decisions for us.
Yeah, absolutely. When you guys wrap the film, and I think it's so hard when people ask questions of the artists or the creatives of well, what are we supposed to do? What you guys made the movie, so tell me what to do. Do you guys have an answer to that, or is that something when obviously you took on this massive responsibility to show this to so many different folks. Do you have your own personal thought on how to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the film itself, you could text defend to 71333, and that'll put you on a list to get notifications about stuff that's happening in your area in terms of public lands and screenings and stuff like that. You can follow us under public_trust on
Public
Instagram.
film.
Well, oh yeah, excuse me, yeah, on Instagram, Public Trust Film. Look for that there. That just got changed for all of our upcoming screenings and stuff like that, and release notes and stuff like that. And I'm gonna let Jeremy talk about the actual important stuff to do
That's important.
Transcends the film.
Well, you kind of asked it in a personal way, which I think is that's interesting, because usually it's just sort of what can we do? And there's so much people can do. It's obviously texting that number will keep you in the loop around things in the film, but a lot of things point to the election and voting. And I think one of the things that we set out with as a goal was, will this film give people enough information that they want to ask of their decision makers, where do you stand on public lands? And I think that that's still a question we want people to walk away from this film and asking, from your county commissioner to your congressional representative to your president, what's your record and where do you stand on these public lands, and how are you working to protect them for future generations, for the sake of climate change, and resiliency. And so I think, number one, do your own research and ask that question. There are really helpful organizations like the Land Trust. And sorry, I forgot the name, but is it the Nevada City Land Trust?
It's the Bear Yuba Land Trust.
Bear
So it's
Yuba,
the two
okay.
watersheds. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So like, that is a local effort. And how do you support locally something in your backyard? And those are the kind of questions we were hoping people would start engaging. And where are the public lands in my backyard? And how do I get out on them? And how do I be a good steward and support them? So certainly I think doing your own research and voting has got to be, that's got to be the priority if you care about public lands. But looking past that is, how do we support real long-term protection? And who are the organizations doing the work? And there's a lot there. Certainly you can get involved with the three geographies we portray, but I guarantee there's something in your own backyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Erin, do you want to answer that, like on behalf of maybe local community and also with the Land Trust?
Yeah, my service is coming in here. I would agree with Jeremy completely. Voting, that's one of the main things we deal with. Every level of government, pretty much, somebody has a role.
Oh, Erin's frozen now. Well, hopefully Erin will join us, but Shelley, I'm going to let you take over on that one, and maybe you can have the last word on what would you like to see from this film for the viewers? Like, what would you like the viewers to take away from something like this, and how can they carry it on personally, and how they can, what they can take and use to protect the land and the people and the animals in their own local communities?
Yeah, I agree. Look in your backyard. There's going to be something going on. I think we all need to keep our eye on the entire nation. We just need a real watchdog group, a network that's easily accessible. Nothing's easy. Like, it takes these guys to go and dig up all this information for us so that we can sit back and hit play. Because we're all so busy in our daily lives. I'm personally, like I'd said, with my tribal responsibilities, and but I just recently, in the last week, they took down these two huge heritage oaks on just like 3 feet over my property line. That these trees had survived the gold rush, the clear cutting of the gold rush, and the one tree had a hole in the split of the tree, and so it may or may not have been healthy, but it was too close to the power lines. Yeah. And the second tree, which was bigger, was not close to the power lines, and it was not sick, and it went down too. And I just went through the whole gamut that I'm sure we are all feeling after watching this incredible film, is that you feel hand-tied. It's like, well, what do we do? I don't know any of the process. And I'm sure there are organizations out there that can be the missing link for us to get active. I know we don't all have an entire lifetime to get a PhD, to learn about public lands and learn about, how government works and what they can and can't do. It seems like it's purposely left a mystery for the layperson. And I just think, when you see this movie and you feel that need to get connected, where are you? My question is always like, do you know whose Indigenous land you're living on? In most cases, those lands were not ceded. They weren't paid for. We already talked about the violent history here, the removal of the Native people from the lands that they, in our tribe, it's just like our only human mandate is, because we have thumbs, we make fire and burn the land and burn our dead. And we're mandated to take care of the land. That's your lifetime's work. Regardless of what your passion is, whether it's recreating the animals, climate, whatever it is, I know you can find a way into that work. literally using texting to find out about the things in the film, but find out what's going on locally. Who are your Indigenous people? We've been doing land acknowledgements lately to recognize the tribe on any given land. I totally believe this should happen wherever you are on the planet. You know, and just personally know like the history of the place where you live. What was there? What's missing? You know, and we don't want to be in this like next phase of extinction around the planet and be culpable of just sitting by and not even sitting by, but just I get triggered, I guess is the word, is when I know that I'm being tricked. That really bothers me. I mean, I'm almost okay giving myself a pass of being a little bit ignorant, but when I know I'm being tricked, that, and this is America, and I truly do still in the depths of my heart believe in the greatness of this country. And like you said, coming together in these moments to protect, we are at our best. You know, we could do that. We just have to educate ourselves and feel with our hearts and get involved.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Isn't Shelley amazing?
For that.
She's awesome.
I just want to be in charge so I can just like tell everybody what to do, and you know, it's so great.
In charge.
Let me know when you're running, and I'll.
Yeah.
Right, I'm ready, man. I got the big stick. I just want to. I keep thinking, where's the adult in anything that's going on today? Like you tell kids, you can't. You have 5 cars, or you're going to share with your friend. Like that's.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for all participating in this discussion. And I definitely want to thank you, Jeremy and David, for making such an incredible, smart, riveting, compelling, just very unique and entirely wholly perfect for the moment. And I hope that everyone sees it. It's a total wake-up call. You guys bring in, I can just see the journalistic backgrounds, and Hal adds to all of that too. You guys have done your research. You show us things that we've never seen before. We may have heard them, but we've never seen them. And I really do think that, you know, going beyond just the things that we love and experiencing things that bring us joy, it's, we all have a weduty as humans to, you know, to further life, to protect it for the next generation. So I want to thank you so much. We'll let you know how the screening goes tomorrow night. We're very excited. It should be a lot of fun, but definitely let's like stay in touch and we'll go ahead and put up all that information on how people can connect with you guys as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
and also, what Shelley was saying, you can find what native lands you're on as well if you go to native-land.ca. It's a fantastic map, and if you're into maps, like it's amazing. So here in Ohio, I'm in Chumash and Makanakan land, so it's a pretty cool resource that you can learn a lot about that. Yeah.
Shelley just did a project with our library where they because one of the things that they've been working on is the revitalization of their language. And I don't know, Shelley, if you've noticed, but all of the title cards went up around town. So it's all in Nisenan. And so you can actually walk around Nevada City. And so like all certain things throughout the community now have are associated with their Nisenan name. So very cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's a step in the right direction for sure.
On top, I think there's like a text number you can text wherever you are in the country, and you can find out what native land you're on too. And I just found it, but if you Google it, you can look up that. It's a pretty cool tool.
Cool. We'll definitely put it in the info section there.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting you guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.